Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Testing, one, two, three. Testing, one, two, three. Okay, it's doing it as well, but you can also do a second check. Testing, one, two, three. Testing, one, two, three. Nope.
You should be. You have the voice.
Test it. How close do you have to hold it? Okay, this is fine.
Speak now.
the sound there.
Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to PhysSoc's first ever Trauma Night. So my name is Hester. I'm the head of events and vice president for 2026. We have a very exciting evening ahead. There's lots of good insight coming from doctors, coming from students, and obviously most of you guys are here to want to volunteer for ER. So this is your perfect opportunity to get orientated, to get ready so that you can go in confidently and know what's coming. So before I begin, I would like to ask that you ensure that your phone is on silent so that we aren't hearing the Life 360 notification while we begin. And if you want to film or post anything on your socials, just make sure that anyone that's in the frame has given you permission to do that instead of just posting it. And then if you do post, please add us. Facebook, Instagram, please do this. So with no further delay, I'm going to be handing over to Rais, the President of the Medical Society, to introduce you to the Helen Joseph Emergency Department on Auxiliary Information.
Hello, everybody. So firstly, thank you for coming, and also like to thank Dr. Safi as well. I'd like to thank Dr. Safi as well for allowing us to come into the PD and share your space with us. We really do appreciate it. So I've been asked by Hester to just talk a little bit about what the PD program entails and how we set it up essentially. It started back in 2024. We wanted to do a hospital program because we thought it would be opportunity for students in year one to get proper clinical exposure
medicine was a specialty that only started this century, which is very unusual because most of the old ones, started hundreds of years ago type of thing. So the first emergency physicians started in 2004. I was one of them, so I was grandfathered into it, or grandmothered into it. What that means is there was no specialty at that time. The people just arrived in a casualty, and the doctor there thought, how they're going to go to peds, they're going to go to internal medicine, whatever it was, and then the groups of other specialties took over. And some of my colleagues who are like 10 years older than me took this and said this is not good enough, and it was happening throughout the world. So they said, listen, you need expertise at the front line so that you're not making mistakes and picking them up when they're dead further on. So that's been happening over the last 10 years before this all over the world, and was brought into South Africa in 2004. So we didn't actually write the exams, we made the exams, the exams, not the first students in who are now many of the specialists that you might meet. So that's just so the sort of history of where it comes from. And then the other thing a lot of people ask me about is, because you talk about trauma, you talk about emergency medicine. Now, you've got to think of it like emergency medicine is the umbrella of all emergencies. Okay? And trauma is part of that, because there are emergency medical cases, PEDS case, OG cases, all sorts of emergency cases. And so emergency often works through the ED or ER, we'll talk about that, and we often work in the pre-hospital environment, although in this country a lot of our pre-hospital environment is taken by our paramedic colleagues. But you will find any doctor interested in it ends up there, whether they happen to be a surgeon or an emergency physician. But we have a very good pre-hospital program for paramedics. And so emergency medicine sort of works in these areas, and then when we see the patients, we will have to refer to the in-hospital specialties, which would be internal medicine, surgery, gynecology, and peds, and their subspecialties. And they then take the patient through into the hospital if necessary, or discharge and follow. If we can discharge from the ED and organize a follow-up for the patient too. Surgery breaks up into many subspecialties, of which trauma is a subspecialty. Any trauma surgeon is a qualified surgeon who then specializes in trauma. Okay, so that is the way you will see a lot of the trauma surgeons. You probably know that Barra and Charlotte have the two separate trauma EDs, run officially by trauma surgeons. But I see in the next 10 years probably, and it's even happening in the Western Cape, that the emergency physicians are going to take over that space. And the trauma surgeons are going to move more towards their surgery specialty. But we will have to always interact together. Okay, so what is emergency medicine? We define it as saying that it's probably the most exciting 15 minutes of any other specialty. So if you're into excitement and adrenaline rushes, this might be for you. Okay, but if your stomach goes in a complete knot, you might want to move elsewhere. Okay? So the characteristics of a doctor, remember, you are very young in medicine, and hopefully you're trying to develop for yourselves what are your characteristics, what are your interests, where do you see yourself going in the next 10, 20, 30 years? And I really encourage you to think about that. So my specialty, which I sort of was into, I was in anesthetics, and I was just told, okay, you have not been grandfathered into emergency medicine, go there. But you won't have that situation. You will have the situation of choosing where you find your interest. And you must think of that not only short term, but long term. Okay, so people who are doing this sort of thing are people that are keen on the adrenaline rushes, because there are a lot of adrenaline rushes. And if your stomach isn't a lot, maybe that's not the case. It is a chaotic environment, so if you're a very specific person, maybe it's not the best for you. It is very fulfilling and it is very challenging mentally because every patient you see every time is a new patient. It's not like the medical ward where you see the same patient again and again and again. You're going to see this patient, move this patient, see this patient, you're making decisions all the time. Okay, it is frontline work. It is teamwork. If you are not a team player, don't join us. It's terrible when you have these non-team players arriving in the ED because they don't join the team. Okay? We have lots of variety. Unfortunately, we often not. The patient wakes up from their delusion, their whatever confusion in the ward, and everyone thanks the physician because they see them for the first time. They didn't see them, us. So you just keep going from that point of view. It is very erratic hours. You're going to work night shift. Night shifts are often very busy in our country. But fortunately, if we move into it, most of you, when you finish, you go home and you cut. Nice that you actually become a manager, it doesn't stop. So that, and we must learn to palliate. I'm sure you've had some discussion of palliation. We palliate in any position that you are as a physician, as a doctor. And you're going to learn to palliate in the ED as well as anywhere else. We get a lot of terminal cancer patients coming in and we don't know what to do. We have to make those decisions in the ED. And it is very much a practical and a theory component. I don't know, I'm sure you know the joke. They say the physician is the one who knows everything, and the surgeon is the one who does everything, and the pathologist is the one who does everything and knows everything from the day too late. Okay? But we do a lot, we need a lot of theory and practical, there's a lot of practical parts in emergency. So that's a little bit about those of you who are interested in that. So, what is this, the ED? What do we do here? And now I'm not talking clinical work for you. I wasn't asked to. I was asked to explain something about the ED. Firstly, in Gauteng, we generally call it the ED or the emergency department. A lot of you will know ER from American movies and videos. EC is very Western Cape, emergency centre. A&E is very British, accident and emergency. It doesn't really matter, but don't call us a casualty. Okay, that is old-fashioned and nobody likes it anymore. Okay, and we still have to change time and process. So, that is the history of emergency medicine. On examination, what do we find at the moment? What is our reality in the ED? Now, this is not about that. I'm not talking about patients. I'm talking about just the general. We have a small space usually, and we almost always have Gauteng, it doesn't matter where you are, even if you're in the clinic at the front line. It is volume overload. There are too few doctors, too many sick patients. And it's really sad what the Gauteng Department of Health is doing because they have closed the posts since October 2024. And I'm sure some of you are very well aware of the concerns for looking at posts at the moment because of this problem. So we have a high volume of patients, very small ratio of doctors, limited space, and we are squashed. We are high acuity, and even at our clinics they see high acuity stuff. Okay? Tertiary settings will see complex pathology, but as I say, even in the clinics you will still see complex pathology, even at the district hospitals when they come into the ED. They don't say, oh, I can only go to a quaternary hospital. They arrive at your district hospital. So there is a lot of pathology in our patients. We have massive resource constraints. For Dr. Helen Joseph, they blocked our entire financial request for money for buying equipment for the last financial year. So we had a whole budget, we had put everything in we wanted, and they just cut it. So we were not able to buy a single piece of equipment in the last 12 months. That's what Gauteng has done, just without telling you. So there are massive constraints that we are dealing with, and I don't think it's just our hospital, particularly in Gauteng. So we're going to be short of equipment. you are usually sitting here now, you're learning clinical, you're learning subjective objective assessment plan, SOAP approach, or history examination and an assessment and a plan for the patient. So you're learning clinical there. But in the front line, there are a lot of logistical problems, as I mentioned. Okay, and so now we've got to be practicing excellent despite the environment of this posh area with 20 patients shouting at you at general care. Not because of it. We do not have that privilege. If we move on, what can we do? It is not very easy. You probably haven't heard of these words. We triage in, and then we might have an access block. Patients are blocked, or they're sitting there for hours not listening. Although this is all over the world, guys. Sometimes I'm actually proud of what we do here. I mean, here that in the Britain, person waiting for 12 hours to listen. We generally are not waiting for patients for 12 hours. So every now and then we lose a patient and then we get really low. So we have to triage the patients, we have to sort the patients, and you in the front line, you have to know. I've got to see the red patients, then the orange, and the yellow patients. The yellow patients are the ones that you should screen the most. And then you have to deal with it. So you have to do clinical management and logistics management. And you have to manage your staff ongoing because everybody gets very stressed. This is very stressful when you have got like 6 or 7 patients looking at you and their family shouting at you and you're trying to stitch, you're trying to put in the milk across the back, and you're trying to save the patient and then someone else is shouting. So leadership in the ED is about making high-stakes decisions with very incomplete information. I had an internal physician register this week walking in, and he sees the nurses front line, the register that they fill in as the patient comes in and says, patients, what is it, not unconscious, patient confused. And the internal medicine register diagnosis is that. But that is your diagnosis in the first 2 seconds of the patient coming in. The patient, and then you might have a better diagnosis 5 seconds later. You might have a better diagnosis 5 minutes later. You might not have a diagnosis for another 2 days. And we talk about the working diagnosis versus the actual diagnosis. So yes, it's hard for the internal physician to know, but he didn't come for the first 4 hours when you had to sort him out. Then not only do we have the block here, but we have what we call also another access block or exit block. So there's your ED covered with patients all over. We often end up resuscitating on the floor. And they can't get out of it. You want to discharge to go, but now the walls are full and they can't get out. And that's called access block or exit block. And when it's very, very busy times of the month, that happens a lot. And then you have these patients that are sitting in the ED for 24, 48 hours waiting to go to the room. And it's very difficult because especially for the nursing staff, the nurses have to nurse the patients that the ED doctors will see. They have to nurse the patients that, for example, the internal medicine doctors will see. So their load doubles and triples. And it becomes a huge problem. And mistakes are made at that time. And that is very stressful for all the staff because if the ED doctors end up treating the patients and they deteriorate because the internal medicine doctors are somewhere in the walls. So that is a little bit about the exit block that we deal with, and it's in our country, but it is worldwide as well written in our scriptures. Okay, so a little bit more about you guys, the Student Physician Society and Helen Joseph Hospital. This is a little bit about you and where you are at the moment. Okay, you are very much being looked after you. Okay, you are not looking after a patient. You are very privileged. When you get to the internship and after that you tends to fall away when it becomes the patient. You have to know about it. So, we live in the ED in a very resource-constrained system, as we said, and we're all hands on deck. So we are very happy to take a few, maximum 4, of students who want to experience the environment, experience the chaos, and help. Because you can help. can go and see what it's like in the front line. And the goal will be obviously the mutual benefits. We gain help on a Friday or Saturday night, and you get a bit of reality. My mentors that were with us last 2 weeks, they said, oh, you can't believe how many overdoses we have seen in the last 2 weeks. That gave them a huge social wake-up on the social problems in the community. We had a lot of overdoses. Okay, frontline will shape you differently. At the moment, you're sitting with textbook knowledge you gather at home, which doesn't put you in the front line. But if you want to develop your clinical confidence, get out there early so that when you're an intern, you don't feel so, I have to put up a drip. Okay? System awareness. If you work in the front line and you work in the chaos, you will be aware of how difficult the system is to work with. And in any case, if you get an idea of the system by the time you're interns, you will have a much better understanding of what you are doing as an intern in the whole system. And you start to develop this empathy and resilience. Okay? When you've seen 6 or 7 overdoses in 1 week, you start to think about these things and what the struggles are in our community. Most of us, I'm afraid, we get very frustrated with the teenage girls who take King Bernardo's on a Saturday night in the line at 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Because they are really damaging themselves for no rhyme or reason because they didn't like what their mother told them. And if you've got 5 or 6 of them, then you've also got 5 or 6 stab chest and a stab heart and 2 myocardial infarctions. The only patient is going to find because you've got to deal with other things. But it is something you need to know and you have to be very careful how you handle that with the patients. The other thing is resilience. Start to pick yourself up so that am I going to be really resilient? Can I support the system through my whole life? Because if you are going to collapse and take 10 Bernardos, that doesn't help the rest of us. And unfortunately, we have this. We have had doctors totally catatonic in the tea room. And now, you have to take doctors off the floor to look after the doctor who's catatonic, never mind the patient. So, you really do have to develop your resilience if you're working in this type of environment. So, volunteering will offer you an education outside the lecture board and an ability to see the real life medical scenarios. Do remember about yourself, especially if you're talking about trauma. If you come to an emergency unit that has trauma, you are going to potentially see some really horrible things. It might not happen the night you come, but it might be the night that your colleague comes and it is really horrible. I mean, one of the common horrible things is when you get like a 99% birds patients. Those are really horrible, tragic things, and they usually are tragic. So you could become a second victim, so you need to protect yourself from it. The moral injury we have is the pain of wanting to do more than the resources allow. We can't look after the 100% burns because we have nowhere to put them and they are not going to survive. They stay in the ED and then they usually die because the ICUs are not going to take a person to look after to get better and who they know is not going to get better. Okay? And so we don't have the resources. Okay? You are going to witness violence every day and it is not very nice if you see a very violent situation, depending on your personal history. Okay? If you, I hope this isn't a secret, but for example, if your mother was raped and you see a rape victim, you are going to get very emotional about it, okay, because it pulls out a lot of memories for you. So we have to be careful of those things. And so that might happen to your colleague, but not to you, and you might have a different experience with a different patient. So these are the things that we have to witness and we have to handle. And you might also have to be supporting your colleagues. You might not have had another interact, but now your friend's mother is raped, and now you see a rape victim. You have to support the victim. You have to support the friend. So be careful that you're aware of these things and the fail of things, and you have to then be able to debrief on this, which I'll talk. So we sometimes, not always, we have patients that come in every week and say, oh no, patient X is here again. So that is not the worst day of their lives. But we will process the worst days of certain people's lives. If your spouse or significant other comes in after a car accident, after a rain breeze or whatever, and is now about to die, that is probably the worst day of your life. And we have to be there for that person. But you have to protect yourself too. Leave them off on this. And acknowledging that it's a problem is not a weakness, it is a diagnostic accuracy. Okay? We need to know that these things are going to happen. And I need to be able to deal with it. So, remember, debrief. Okay? Debrief is usually first things debrief with the people that are at your level, your friends around you, your colleagues, so interns with interns, students with students, because you have the same experience as usual. Okay? You can then consider debriefing at home, depending on who's at home, what their mood is, and how much they understand. Because if your significant other has never been in the PD, they might not quite understand everything you're trying to explain to them. Okay? You can then debrief within a team with your seniors. And we often do that, debriefing when we do M&Ms or after a day. To debrief, I should have done that better, I could have done that better, no, you couldn't have done that better. And so we discuss with your MOs, your registrars, and your consultants. You need to be able to debrief it. Please guys, remember that as you move on in life. Okay? You need to have some boundaries. When you are a doctor, you have to work as a doctor, and you can't become the patient's burst into tears relative. And so there are times when you're going to be a doctor's self, and other times when you might go home and cry on the shoulders of someone who cannot in front of the patients. So you have to work around those things as you go to these. And look for something else that distracts you when you go home. There are going to be nights when you arrive home and you have seen something terrible, or you know you did something that wasn't quite right, and you will spend that whole night waking up and sweating about it. Okay? But you have to work through that, and you have to work through it as best you can, and talk to people about it so that you clear the air for yourselves. Okay? And then find things to do. Exercise, run, swim, whatever you do. Go to the felt, go to the bush. You're not so close to the seaside. But, I mean, go to a hobby, an art hobby, pottery, whatever you like to do. Find something that you can also distract you from these things that you have to put up with on a daily basis. And that's not only me, because you're going to see it dead internal medicine or surgery and pediatric births are really, really tricky. We just had a kid coming rushing from school, dead as a bird. We don't know what happened to that child. Of course, now the lawyers are on our backs, but it's not us. We have to do it on court. What happened to that child? They just collapsed at school. And those things you don't see on a lot. So make sure you have some hobbies and you have quality friends. Okay? So you do not want to have that in place and you do not work out. So, just this short summary. Respect the constraints. There are constraints. Do not pretend that they are not going to be there. I had a Nigerian colleague arrive, and when I said, okay, so what we had, an example of 7 ventilated patients where we actually only had 4 ventilators, and they were calling from the wards for more ventilators, but the nursing staff, they had 2 nursing staff, and now they want to ventilate more. And the Nigerian says, oh, let's just buy more ventilators. That something doesn't work. I need then, if I 10 ventilators, I need 10 nurses to, you're breaking the system by asking for more without the logic behind it. Okay? But your care has to stay. And your care has to stay by you looking after yourself. So, subscribe in early and come and join us to see these situations so that you get yourself prepared for this. And people are still interested. I think young people are still interested because you can get a year of that exposure as a young person. It develops a lot of skills, a lot of communication skills, a lot of practical skills, which will hold you in good stead everywhere. I wish so. I mean, it is really terrible. I've never seen this before in my career, that the doctors are not getting jobs. It's shocking.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you so much for that very informative and helpful presentation. It remains a privilege to be addressed by doctors who are genuine experts in their fields. As Dr. Saki has revealed, the ED is a immensely unique space in the hospital, and being submerged into this environment through volunteering as a student remains an immensely unique experience. We'll now call on Angela and Shona to get two students who are going to share their experiences as volunteers in the ED with us.
Alright, so good evening. That was quite a lot to digest, I think. But before I start, I want to say I think what the doctor has done is, like, in our lectures every day, they tell you, like, here's your epidemiology, this is what you're going to see. You have conversations, you have your motivations, and it's always just 3 out of 10,000, 3 out of 100,000, or whatever the percentage is. But I mean, setting that this is reality, this is not stats on a paper, this is what you will see if you do now, next year in Game 3, well, for us in Game 3, in Game 2, in Game 3, in Game 4, internship console, and then however long you'll be practicing for. I mean, this is what you signed up for, this is what you pay your fees to do, this is what you did the trick for, and then like, for some people the dream since they were 3, since they were 4, so really bringing that down I think is a really good thing for everyone. So yeah, good evening, my name is Dr. Pele. I am a GEM student, and then a brief summary of myself. So I did the GEM program, I did a PhD, I did pharmacology and physiology, and then last year I was in GEM March. So people hold ideas and expectations when it comes to new experiences, and the same is true for us. When you go home to open Netflix, you watch The Pitch, you watch ER, you watch whatever you want to do, and that paints a real picture in your mind of what you expect when you walk into the ED, when you come to med school, when you volunteer, when you go to the operating room and all of that. But that's not what happens, right? You hear the stories from doctors, you'll hear stories from us, you'll hear stories from colleagues later on. And that is the expectation of the experience in the state. So it is like we all go home, it's nice to watch the show, but remember that the shows are not what happens. But it's important to go into every new experience with an open mind, with cautious optimism, and the attitude with which you go into the experience will have an influence on the outcome and your future perspective on what it's going to hold. So in the ED for Game 1 students and in the clinic for us, you will get to apply what you learn in the classroom into reality. So just a bit on my experience. We went to the ED on one rather gloomy Saturday night. We were greeted by what looked to us like a quiet evening, but we know the ER doctors never like to say that it's a quiet day. While we walk in, the beds are empty, there's hardly anyone, turnover, it just happened. But, I mean, as Dr. Saki said, it's chaos. So within like hours of our arrival, there was a shooting in town. So you get all the patients associated with that. So setting, like, and then for us, that was the first time that any of us had lost a patient. So we had someone who came in who took 6 gunshots to the back, and they were like, they didn't make it with ambulance bed. But yeah, so talking to people, I mean, that was for us something that we had to do. Like the doctor had to coach us, this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to cope with it. If you have any problems, this is who you speak to. And that's a real eye-opener. But one of the main things I learned is that there is a real difference between clinical knowledge and practical knowledge. In the ED, you don't have to apply all the skills you spent all this time learning. So clinical skills is not only to pass the RCT, it actually has a purpose. So when they tell you this is how you palpate for tenderness, this is what you're going to do, and you
you have to know how to bring it off the top of your mind at a moment's notice. You'll learn that common things occur commonly. So all the disorders you learn in the lecture notes are useful, and there will come a time where you will see the patient. But the number one thing they learn when they say it's important in nature is because it is important, because common things occur commonly. When you're in the ED, you will see the immense amount of knowledge that the doctors have. Because, like Dr. Sati said, it's the most exciting 15 minutes of any doctor's life. You will see patients who come in because they have stomach ache, you saw patients who came in because they were shocked, you had patients who had OD, and it's the same doctor 15 minutes apart who has to treat the same patients with the same amount of care, with the same amount of empathy. Because you're there. I mean, yeah, this might be the worst day of their life, but it's just another afternoon for you. So seeing that is a truly, truly humbling experience. At close, I would highly recommend the volunteering experience for everyone. If you do once, if you do twice, but I mean, every time you're going to go, you're going to see something different with a different doctor, with different patients, and that is highly valuable. Personally, for me, it has changed the way that I approach medicine, because passing the test is of course important because you're not a doctor, so you can't be paid. Right? That's not what you want. But passing the test isn't going to help the patient who's diagnosed take it. So first you need to get there, but you need to know what the test was teaching you and how to take it to the patient. So personally, I'd like to thank the Physician Society for allowing me to do that, because I was a part of the Southbound last year and I'm still not a part of the society. So allowing me to do that is truly an honor and a privilege. And then to Dr. Sati for allowing all of us to come, it was truly, truly humbling experience. So thank you to you, your staff at Henderson, and the society overall.
Was the first time I had to speak in years I got a call that morning. So I think by this point we've got a good understanding of the emergency department. I think we get the gist of getting more clinical exposure, mastering practical skills, and seeing if you can start with the type of goal that would make Jigsaw tremble in his boots. But I want to do something a little different with my time here today. I want to tell you guys a story about a game of heads or tails. But a quick question before we start with that. Who of you sitting here today have always wanted to work in healthcare? This is your heart's passion and you've always felt like this was meant for you. Raise your hands. And would we kind of got caught up in this game called life and just ended up here? Good to know I'm all right. So this story starts about 3 years ago. I'm sitting at my desk after a long trip holiday of avoiding thinking about my future. It's been a few days since I received my final results, and I've listed university honors sitting in front of me. They range from the spheres of music to astrophysics to finance. The only issue, most of them are set to expire within the next few hours. And so I sit frozen, having not once in my life known what I want to do with myself. And I've thought about it long and hard, but I just struggle to visualize myself in any of these careers listed out in front of me. I can feel the pressure from my family pushing me towards certain choices. In that moment, I find myself reaching for a coin laying on top of my desk. And I take this coin and I start flicking it. And I kind of use it to cancel out some of the options in front of me. And eventually, this coin brings me to an end. So, with my back to the wall, I accept the gamble. As I progress through my first few years, I find myself without much time to reflect on the decision I made. I get caught up in the rush of lectures, practicals, new relationships, and the social life that comes with it. As second year rolls around, I can sense that something's wrong. My heart and mind are in disagreement that this is where I'm supposed to be. And that brings on a period of social withdrawal as I once again search for my place under the sun. As third year rolls around, the problem becomes even more apparent. I'm completely uncertain of who I truly am and why I'm even here in the first place. This was around the time we kicked off the EAT program. And thinking I'm tough enough to handle it, I throw myself right in while the state of internal turmoil looms over. And it starts out fairly relaxed. You take some blood, surround blood gas here and there, put a few ECGs, put up a couple of IVs. I quickly realized that I have no idea what I'm doing with even the most basic of tasks. Don't get me wrong, I'm confident at the skills themselves, but it's the small things again. Forgetting to heparinize the syringe before drawing blood, not realizing that the oxygen tap needs a little adapter before putting the pipe on. Trying to find the power button for the ECG. As the night progresses though, you get better. You pick up on all these soft skills that you can't really learn anywhere else, especially not this rapidly. Before I know it, I'm helping a doctor stabilize the hip of a man who's been hit by a car. He yells out in pain each time I twist the makeshift pelvic fiber. But we get through it. We see a few more curious cases along the way. Pacemaker malfunctions, strange joint dislocations, organic phosphate poisonings, and right on cue, just as we're building up some confidence, our first resuscitation rolls in. 3 of the nearby doctors drop what they're doing and jump into action. 2 of us students nervously trail behind. We get busy doing rounds of chest compressions. The doctors, in perfect coordination, take up different roles. One man's ECG, one prepares adrenaline and atropine, and the last man's a backup mask while using the suction tube to prevent the patient from aspirating. The atmosphere is tense, but the doctors carry such a calm and calculated confidence, I can hardly feel my own nerves. During one of my CPR rounds, I momentarily focus my attention to the patient's face. His wife and child are waiting outside for him. There are a few times I've wanted something in life the way I wanted light to return to his eyes that day. And that drive I felt in that moment is probably why I'm still here right now. Upon reflection, I realized that primitive drive to see the light stay in the eyes of those around you is likely an experience as old as humanity. Whether a member of your tribe's hunting party just got trampled by an elephant, whether you're a sailor fending off the plague and claiming the lives of your crewmates, whether you're a med student presenting at trauma night thinking about the fact that you could have had a bachelor's degree by now if you'd gone back to real sciences route. I think that drive lives in everyone. In every person in this room that's here for other reasons, that's unsure about why they're here. It sits something inside you waiting to be awakened. We never did see the light return to the patient's eyes that day. Unfortunately, that's just reality. In here, medicine lives in lecture slides and textbooks, but out there it's real, it's human, it's messy, and sometimes it loses. But I found comfort in knowing we had done everything we could. I realized that my internal struggle wasn't so much about choosing the right career as it was about the pursuit for identity. An identity that specifically has an insatiable drive to it. And here's the identity that comes with this body. We are the silent observers sitting in fluorescent corridors at 3 a.m., holding the last stand between a heartbeat and silence that follows. We are the bridge between the scientist's cold precision and the healer's warm hand. We are the first strange face a stranger sees on the worst day of their life, and sometimes the last. Our robes are stained with the blood of the stranger and the sweat of the desperate. We don't promise miracles, but we promise love. And when the doors swing open and the next stretcher rolls in, we do it all over again. Reading this back, I'm glad I didn't go with the poet route. So this is what we offer you through this program. More than the skills, more than the high intensity exposure, we offer the chance to find purpose. To awaken the drive inside of you, whose sole purpose is to preserve the life of others. And for those of you that have always wanted to be there, I invite you to further nurture this connection between the heart and the mind. As for me, I still don't know if this is the right road. That's the ironic tragedy of life. It has to be lived forward, but oftentimes it only makes sense in the verse. But what I do know is that when someone's light begins to fade, I want to keep in that loop by the moment. And for now, that's enough.
your sincere reflections on your experience with ED. From the insights, I'm sure will strengthen your anticipation to get involved in ED volunteering as soon as possible. So let's get some admin done so we can make that happen. One of our prerequisites for volunteering in the emergency department with PhysSoc is that you must be a member of our society subcommittee. Our subcommittee applications are officially open as of yesterday, and because we are family, we aren't simply going to let you to pay for yourself. We're going to show you how you can join the subcom. So, you start by logging onto your self-service portal, and you're going to scroll down until you find Person Society on the stream homepage. Then you're going to click on Add Clubs and Society PTL. And you scroll quite far way down to the Students Position Society. And finally, just going to click on the Agree to Terms and Conditions tab, and just like that, you're a member of our subcom. This tutorial will also be available on our Instagram page, so if you have friends that want to join but couldn't attend this tonight, please direct them to our Instagram. Thank you guys so much.
So first, something that is essential to consider when you are volunteering in hazardous hospital emergency is what you're going to wear to feel confident, refreshed, and ready to take on the ED. So luckily, we have some representatives who can clear this evening, who are excited to engage with you and assist you in filming finding the ideal scrub sites for your first volunteering trip at the University Hospital emergency room. So if you guys please take some time, they're right by the entrance and so they also have some great specials. So if you guys want to get some great scrubs for when you start volunteering in the emergency department, please make sure to go to tank. And then also just want to have a quick shout out to our sponsors of some of the gel clips that we're going to be using tonight for our RV nights. Thank you everyone. So I'd like to take a moment to thank all of the incredible speakers that have spoken this evening. Dr. Kathy, we know that you're an amazing busy person and it makes us all the more grateful that you come this evening to speak with us and to share with our student body your knowledge and your experience. Thank you for your insightful presentation and for your continuous support of the Students Position Society and for all of our initiatives. We would like to offer you a small token of our appreciation, just to say thank you for your contribution this evening and to furthering our society goals moving forward. Thank you to Shona and Darshan. It takes a lot to stand in front of your peers and share your experiences. You spoke from the heart, and I think that all of us can agree that your effort was a personal and sincere energy. Thank you. We also have to give a bit of appreciation. Then I'd like to thank all of the members of the Students Position Society who have contributed to making this evening happen. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you guys for attending, for taking the time to come here this evening. And to be willing enough and brave enough to participate in our ED volunteering and for having the passion and drive to further develop yourself beyond just the curriculum. So that you do good volunteering, I think that's what we do. So, before I hand over to Paul who's going to introduce the skills workshop, I just want to explain a bit of the admin behind how volunteering works. So you're going to be added to a subcom group, and when we have organized a volunteering initiative, a poll is going to go out for Thursday, Friday, Saturday evening. It's from 7 to 10. You're then going to vote. It is a first come, first served kind of thing, but obviously if you see that, hey, Sasha is volunteering every single day, no one else is getting a chance, then we'll make sure that everyone has a chance. You will always be volunteering with a PhysSoc member with you. The reason being, we've all been, we know what's cooking, so that something scary doesn't happen and you turn around and there's no support system. So you're not going alone, the doctors know your students,